Hello friends and welcome back to another video. I am finally putting together a video covering everything to do with my plans going into Shadowlands. We're only a couple days away and many of you have been coming into stream and asking, Sai, what covenants do we want? What Soulbinds, Conduits, Legendaries, talents, trinkets, all that kind of stuff. So I thought I'd kind of make a massive video just to put that all together for you. I do want to quickly preface this by saying I'm not a theory crafter. Okay, I don't have the spreadsheets and like the statistics and the sims and all that kind of stuff. I don't run it all through the sims. What I do is called feely crafting, which is a lot more like me getting hands-on, jumping into the dungeon, seeing dungeon by dungeon. Oh, well, this build is good in this dungeon, but it's not so good in that dungeon because of different mob counts, different pull types, all that kind of stuff. Oh, we're good on this week with this, with this affix. Oh, but this affix combination is pretty bad for us. Same with raid. I'll jump in and do that in a similar manner. But I just wanted to preface this is my plan going into Shadowlands. This is what I'm looking to do. No one, everyone's making predictions on what may or may not get nerfed and what the best path is to go by. But I just wanted to preface this by saying this is my plan. If you want to follow me along with it and you want to do the exact same thing, excellent. But if not, that's cool too. Looking at covenants, I don't know if many of you have been able or have been keeping an eye on Wowhead and have checked out Guilty's update on Feral saying that Kyrian is looking to be the best for Raid and for Mythic Plus. And I'm probably likely to agree, really. Like, Kyrian is looking quite strong. Even with the nerf, I think it's still probably going to be our best in slot, realistically. And there are a few good reasons for that, right? But I want to kind of say, like, all of the covenants in general are looking pretty good, right? Like, I'm a big fan of Night Fae. I've done the damage, even looking at Necrolord and say like Mythic Plus and stuff, like the damage is still pretty comparable to some of the other covenants. Like, it's not this massive gap where in one situation, with Kyrian you're going to be doing 5k overall, and with Necrolord you're going to be doing 2k. It's more a case of like Kyrian might get you an extra couple hundred DPS, which is still a significant amount, but it's not like game breaking, so you can probably go any covenant if you really want to, though if you really want to perform at your best, I would recommend probably Kyrian, though I want to make some cases for why I think Night Fae might be a good choice too. So the benefits of Kyrian are it does a bit more DPS than the rest. It empowers an ally too, so it's not just you gaining this benefit, you're also giving it to an ally, which can be very beneficial. Some people say, I want to bring my boy Barry because Barry's gonna definitely give me my buff that I want, so that's cool. It's also a low cooldown. It aligns well with Tiger's Fury and with Berserk, so that's pretty cool. It's easy to use. You kind of just press it and you just do your normal rotation. There's nothing that you have to really think about and change based on the playstyle of it, really. And it scales very well with AoE. Necrolord, Night Fae, Venthia technically does scale with AoE, but realistically, you're going to be using it with Berserk most of the time because it aligns perfectly. And so, really, it doesn't, it does scale with AoE, but, technically, The cons to Kyrian is that if your partner dies during the fight, you now can't use your Kyrian ability. You'd have to manually deselect it and then reapply it to somebody new, which takes time. It means you're stopping attacking for 5 seconds or so. So you have to consider that. It's pretty boring. It's, not very interactive. It doesn't really change your gameplay a whole lot. Some of you won't see that as a con. For me, I personally do. Your ally gains 50% of the benefit of the ability, so it's not just seen in your DPS, right? So yes, it technically will do more DPS, but some of the damage it's doing is being calculated as the damage that your friend is gaining. And so when you're on the DPS meter and stuff and they're kind of pushing ahead or whatever, potentially, let's say they're like a frost mage or fire mage or something and they're pushing ahead, and then you give them an extra 3 to 5% damage. I mean, yes, you're getting a few extra percent as well, but you're not seeing that reflected in your own damage. And so for some of you, that might be seen as a negative. But then I want to talk about Night Fae a little bit, because I'm still considering potentially going Night Fae. So for me, it's an interesting to use ability with Convoke the Spirits. It's dynamic, and you can use it in single target in cat form, or you can jump into Boomkin and you can do Starfall and Full Moon and all that kind of stuff, and so it can have that AoE element to it, which is pretty cool. And I've seen it do very well, say in like Halls of Atonement, in the chapel. It works well with Berserk, Apex, well, with your Berserk rotation, which we'll look at later on in the video, and I'll show you why it works well. It also works well with Blood Talons, the reason being because it can generate and also consume Blood Talons procs, which is really cool. Though this has kind of been less of a thing since they nerfed the spell use count from 16 spells cast down to 12 spells cast, so take that into some consideration. It can offer defensive benefits as well if needed. And it's in general like quite versatile, right? You can go Guardian, you can go Boomkin, Resto, doesn't matter. You can take it into Raid, PvP, it doesn't matter. It's always going to perform to a similar standard, you know? It doesn't really matter what situation you're in, which is pretty cool. The cons to Night Fae, though, are it's random DPS. And I've been testing it on dummies, and like yesterday I was doing some testing. Sometimes I'd use Convoke, and I'd do 25k DPS. And then another time I'd use it and I get 55k DPS, and then a whole range in between from like 35k, 45k, something like that. Like it's just a whole range. So the consistency of damage is not there, but of course across the whole of say like a dungeon, it will average out, right? And you'll have some really high ones, some low ones, and it will average out, right? However, on a raid boss, if you're trying to pass well or something, and you just have like one really bad convoke or two really bad convokes, and all of your damage was being like, you know, pumped in those convoke periods, it's gonna feel bad. It doesn't scale with AoE usually, unless you do jump into Boomkin and you do start popping Starfalls and whatnot. And also, I think the Soulbinds are less, I'm gonna say like less good, right? Some of them are situated, so I'm in a build right now where I'm actually getting, and this is a build that probably won't come online for a long time, but because you've got to unlock Karen and then all the pieces here. But I have one potency conduit, one finesse, and then 2 defensive if I want to go for this additional crit build. You can, of course, also just gain that extra potency conduit there, but I just think it's kind of less good in some situations. So that's kind of a breakdown of some of the covenants. Yes, Venthyr is still good, but like you wouldn't want to take Venthyr into PvP. Necrolord is good, but again, it doesn't work well with, say, Circle of Life and Death, and it also doesn't work well in Mythic Plus because it's purely single target. As soon as you start adding additional targets to Necrolord, it falls off. So the other covenants are cool, they're okay, but I just don't think they're quite comparable to, or quite as good as, say, Kyrian and Night Fae. I'm still not decided which covenant I'm going to be going yet. It's likely going to be Night Fae, but we'll see just how big the difference is in damage as we go forward. I might end up changing a couple weeks in. We'll see. So then to look at some of these legendaries and what is going to be my week 1 plan, or well, I should say week 2 plan, because Blizzard has literally just put out an update tonight to say that they're going to stagger Torghast release, so you're not going to be able to get a legendary week 1. Probably going to be looking like week 2 now, which is kind of cool because it gives us more time to decide on which legendary we're ultimately going to make or take first. So it might give you a bit more time if you're undecided, but for me, I'm going to be going Cat-Eye Curio or Apex Predator first, and there are a couple of reasons for this. So Cat-Eye Curio is going to probably be my first one because it's super versatile. You can take it into any type of content and it is going to perform. You can play it with any build. You can play it with MOC, you can play it with Saber Blood Talents, you can play it with Feral Frenzy. It doesn't matter. It's still going to perform well. There are still ways in which it's going to perform optimally, but it's always going to perform well. And at the beginning of an expansion where we have no gear and no like bolstering systems to like help bulk us up, then we really struggle with energy, right? We have no crit, we have no haste. It's a bad time. So until we get that, Cat-Eye Curio is going to be a really good legendary to have to help deal with those energy issues. And looking at Apex Predator, the reason why I think it's going to be a really good legendary is I've been using it in keys a lot, and I will get about 400,000 plus DPS on my, or well, damage on my Ferocious Bite throughout the length of a key. And this is at like between the 10 to 14 level. I think in a 14 key, I got like 75 procs of Apex Pred, which is just free Ferocious Bites that are going on here. So it's a really good legendary. It could potentially be really good with say like Blood Talons, or I've found some really cool uses for it, but I'll get into some of these builds a little bit later on in the video. So those are probably my first 2 legendaries. What I'd probably be looking at next, if I was going to choose anything, is probably Eye of Fearful Symmetry, because this legendary looks really good for me, specifically in certain raid encounters and also in certain affix weeks, right? And so it's probably not something I'm going to take first, but it'll be something that I'll take eventually, right? It's going to be good in raid fights where you have this constant spawn of ads, right? So I think the Kale Thas fight, for example, in the raid would be a potentially good one, or even the council fight. I don't actually know what that's ending up looking like because they've changed it so many times, but we'll see how that ends up playing out. And then it's going to be really good in Mythic Plus because of Spiteful. Spiteful is going to be a really good affix week where this is going to do very, very well, because you'll have things dying at different rates, right? And as things are dying at different rates and new mobs are being brought in and all that kind of stuff, it's going to mean that these Tiger Fury resets are going to look really good with Berserk and stuff in situ. So that could be really, really good as a good third legendary, I would say. And then I'll probably go Circle of Life and Death last, or like fourth, and then I'll probably look to get like off-spec legendaries or something. This could be a good legendary, like if you can put a good bleed build together, maybe using Lunar Inspiration and, you know, Blood Talons and whatnot, and can maybe make that perform well, then this could potentially be a really good legendary. But again, I don't think it's going to be my first one, because it's going to be a real struggle to maintain bleeds when you have no crit, no haste, and your gear's really trash, and then you've also got a legendary, which means that you need to be applying more bleeds more often and stuff. So yeah, I don't know about that one as a first choice, but I'll probably take that like fourth, I would think. Now, when it comes to Soulbinds, I know we've already kind of discussed Covenants quite a bit. When it comes to Soulbinds, these are going to be things that take a very long time to unlock. These are going to be weeks and weeks and weeks of progression. So keep that in mind when you're making your choice. That's all I'm really going to say about Soulbinds, is just keep that in mind. Like Clea, for example, like she's not going to be unlocked for like 2 months or something like that. Maybe more, actually. So you're probably going to be just rocking with your boy Pelly for a little bit. So keep that in mind when you're making your decisions on what Covenant. Maybe it's better to go like a certain Covenant for the first couple weeks, and then once you unlock a certain pathway, then you switch to a different Covenant to make up for those Soulbinds. I personally, I mean, like I said, I'm going to be going potentially Night Fae, in which case I'm just going to go with Naya, I'd probably say like Nia, and just probably progress down this tree here, get my potencies and whatnot, and probably just progress through there and do that for the time being. So yeah, just keep that in mind, that they're going to be slow to unlock, so that if that does impact your decisions, think about that. All right, now taking a look at Conduits here, I'm actually going to show you my notes for this because it pretty much sums it up, right? So Tiger's Fury and Ferocious Bite, best two. Others suck. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're going forward with this segment. But yeah, I mean, taking a look, right? So this is the one that I mentioned initially, is the Tiger's Fury. Carnivorous Instinct. Tiger's Fury damage bonus is increased by 3%. This scales up to 7.2% when you unlock the last rank, which when you get in, like, say, a dungeon, or I mean in certain like raid fights that has larger AoE, this Tiger's Fury benefit is going to persist for like 80+% of like a dungeon. Like, that's massive just to get a flat damage percent on all of your abilities, you know, whereas for, you know, some of these others, it's not going to persist as long. Say for Taste of Blood, where you're getting additional damage on your Ferocious Bite, yeah, you're getting 6% damage. You know, if you have Rake, Thrash, and Rip up on a target, you're getting 6% damage. You can potentially get increased damage from your Feral Frenzy, but realistically, that's a short window every 45 seconds. It's not like that, you know, that will bring the average damage down a little bit lower. But let's just focus on the first 3 bleeds. You're looking at 6% increased damage just for your Ferocious Bite. Now, would you rather have that, or would you rather just have a flat 3% on everything? I would probably just prefer that 3% on everything, really, but it also doesn't scale very well, right? Like, Carnivorous ends up going from 3% to 7.2%, whereas this ends up going from like 2 to 4.8. I mean, it's still going to be roughly like, what, a 14.4% or so on on your ferocious bite damage, which is quite strong, which is why I would probably like use the two of them, right? It doesn't have to be a case of either or. It's a case of you can still use both, but I think they are going to be really, really good contenders. Things like Sudden Ambush is, I'd say, less good now that Berserk is a thing. Like, now that they've changed the way Berserk works, I wouldn't really opt for this one personally, though I could see it being pretty good in certain builds. And then you have Incessant Hunter, where rip damage has a 10% chance to grant 3 energy. Like, I think that one's kind of just dog shit. I could see Sudden Ambush, like, potentially being strong, and I'm sure some people will use it and do well with it. But Incessant Hunt, just like, or Hunter, just kind of looks dog shit. The energy is, the chance is so slim, and the energy gain is so low. I don't really know what the intention is here. Like, just wear a Cat Eye Curio and have no energy problems anyway, and then get more damage elsewhere. You know, like, I don't really see the point in that one. That's kind of what I'm thinking with some of those conduits there. Just keep in mind, obviously, that you can only have 2 potency conduits at a time. And for certain builds, I mean, I was using this build, I believe, where I actually only ended up having 1. Another point to make, actually, when it comes to conduits is each covenant is going to have a different special conduit for you. So this one's quite good when it comes to Night Fae. This could actually potentially be a really good conduit, though it's a 15% damage increase on a 2-minute cooldown on random generated abilities. Probably not as good as the Ferocious Bite or Carnivorous Instinct default, you know. But keep in mind with Kyrian, because a lot of you probably will go Kyrian, be careful, because you don't want to take, or in my opinion, you don't want to take the Kyrian one, because it reduces the cooldown of your Kyrian ability, which then means it doesn't align with your Tiger's Fury anymore. At least initially. I think about if you get like enough ranks, eventually it will, and they will realign in some way, but you actually probably won't want to take it, because then you'll just wait 6 seconds before you... I think the initial rank takes 10 seconds off your Kyrian ability, so 6 seconds off, and then now you have to wait 6 seconds before you use it so that it aligns well with Tiger's Fury. So it's kind of a pointless thing. Keep that in mind. So I mentioned earlier about specific builds, right? And I wanted to kind of bring this to your attention. So I think that there are like 2 really strong builds right now in Mythic Plus. And then there's probably some others that you guys could probably bring to light, or that other people will be rocking. But so far, I've found 2 really good builds that I think bode well with me. So I'll preface this by saying I don't like using Blood Talons in Mythic Plus, so I'm probably not going to. It doesn't do enough damage to justify me needing to take it. And I've become accustomed to freeing myself up to be able to deal with mechanical issues rather than to play around this Blood Talons window that can be a little bit finicky. So the main 2 builds that I think are going to be really good are Predator, Soul of the Forest, Primal Wrath, Feral Frenzy, and then you take Apex Predator as your legendary. Now, this is going to put you in situations where you are at times energy starved, right? It's really good burst. It has really good prior target damage during large AoE. So it's going to be really good for Mythic Plus. It will leave you low energy at times. That's when you cycle in. That's when you jump into your Moonkin form and you throw in the Sunfire, right? That's when you're going to be looking to do that kind of content. Apart from that, that's kind of really the build, right? The alternative build that I would say would be really good is putting on a Cat Eye Curio, so you have your energy resolved, and then just kind of going Moment of Clarity. And then this is just going to be a spam build. You should never be in a position where you're that low on energy that you need to Sunfire, right? Like, this is just going to be a go, 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 spam, spam, spam. You shouldn't really ever have any waiting around, especially if you build correct stats with, like, getting enough crit and haste and whatnot. You can also opt for even potentially, like, a Sabertooth Blood Talons build with Cat Eye Curio, which could be really interesting. Could have some really big ferocious bites, and you have some energy, like, to nullify the fact that this is going to be an energy starving build, though this might need a little bit more time to come online when you get enough stats, maybe in like a 9.1 build or something like that. Though you could potentially still run a Pred Blood Talons Cat Eye Curio build, though I think for me this would be like the go-to if I just want a big spam 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 build. And I'm not too bothered. This will probably be what I do on lower keys. Like, this is probably what I'll do, Cat Eye Curio, first legendary, for the first couple weeks, and then eventually I'll transition into this, you know, like I mentioned, into this Apex Pred, Feral Frenzy kind of build. And that's what I'm looking at in terms of builds. haven't done too much work when it comes to like optimizing the DPS rotation, because things have been getting nerfed and buffed like each week, and I haven't wanted to hard commit to scoping out the real numbers until we got closer to a release date. So now that we're going into release, like the first 2 weeks when there's nothing else going on in the expansion, I'm just going to be hard focusing on rotational like execution and what is the best DPS in a Mythic Plus environment. But something I wanted to show you with my like Berserk rotation, which is really interesting, is based on the night being Night Fae, right? And it basically is going to secure us with Tiger's Fury for like the first 45 seconds of a fight, and just weaves in the Convoke at a really nice time where you can still get it during your Berserk window and whatnot. So what you would do is you would, on single target in Mythic Plus, provided that you're this talent setup with the Feral Frenzy and whatnot, you would, so normally you'd have 5 combo points, right? But you'd basically, in fact, like, let's just build up to 5 because it doesn't matter. We can stealth, or we don't need to go from stealth. So going from like 5 combo points, you would then Berserk, Tiger's Fury, Rip. You'd Rake. You don't even bother. You don't even bother thrashing. Get your Feral Frenzy up there. Nice little Apex Pred proc. Now our Tiger's Fury is about to fall off. So what we do is I'll just re-rep that, Convoke. We Convoke during the last 4 seconds of the Berserk. We get a re-up on our Tiger's Fury. Perfect, right? We even snag in the little Feral Frenzy there as well as part of our rotation. So now our Tiger's Fury is about to fall off. It's at 2 seconds left. Oh, look. Another Tiger's Fury right there for you. That now means during our opening rotation, we have full Tiger's Fury. You can even delay it slightly if you really wanted to, and you could probably align it with that Feral Frenzy really nicely. So you could probably delay that last Tiger's Fury, but I don't know, like 5-6 seconds, something like that, and then you'd sneak in that Tiger's Fury. But that's pretty much how the build would go with Berserk on single target. In terms of AoE, like really just rake everything from, I'd say, 1 to 4 targets for now, and then be like Primal Wrathing on cooldown. Obviously you'd thrash on 2 or more targets. You'd be, I believe it's 2 or more, and then you'd be like with Berserk, you'd just be rake spamming basically. The last thing is, like with Convoke, is you'd probably jump into Moonkin form and you'd look to do a Convoke on large AoE. I'm talking like 8-9+ targets. Like I'm talking big, right? That's when you'd want to be jumping into Moonkin and using your Convoke. Apart from that, I mean, it's pretty much as it was before. You know, we're swipe spamming, we're throwing out our Primal Wrath on cooldown. Well, as we have our 5 common points, you know, like as soon as possible kind of thing. And that's pretty much it. Like weaving in the Ferocious Bites. I'd say you'd still want to weave in Ferocious Bites anywhere from like 1 to 4 targets. But with Apex Predator, you can normally just keep Primal Wrathing and you'll get your free Ferocious Bites as a part of that anyway, so it's all good. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was like me rapid fire talking through, but I hope it was helpful. Apart from that, have the best time going into Shadowlands. Make sure you drink water regularly. Get your water checks. Make sure you have your posture check sitting up straight in your chair. Eat healthy. Don't get bloated. Don't hurt yourself. Try and do some exercise if you can, if you're planning on staying up all night and whatnot. And just have a really good time with it. I'm going to be streaming it. I look forward to seeing some of you in the chat, or potentially like, hearing your journeys as you do dabble and jump into stream from time to time. Apart from that, I'll see you in Shadowlands, and buy my merch, check me out on Twitch, and that's it. See you later.